Hello there and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the SV503 102mm F7 ED doublet refractor from SVBONY. They've kindly lent it to me so that I can do this review, after which I have to return it to them. It's a 714mm native focal length telescope, that's at F7, but for astrophotography you need to fit this, which is purchased separately, which is a 0.8 times reducer flattener. With the flattener fitted, the focal length drops to 571mm at f5.6. So what I'm going to do is give you a closer look at the telescope, show you its features and tell you what I think about the build quality, and then I'm going to set up a rig with the telescope, take it outside and take some images and share those images with you, and we'll see how good they are. So let's get started. So I'm going to start just saying a few words about my first impressions on the build quality. I'm really quite impressed with it. It's not the most expensive telescope of this size. It's only £468 in the UK and $530 in the US, but it feels really solidly made. All of the machining is nice, the surface finish is very good, and if I take the cover off the focuser here, the focuser is really smooth. It feels solid and smooth. I'm impressed with that. So yeah, first impressions are really good. So what I'm going to do is start at the front of the telescope and work my way back and just show you all of the features up close. So when the telescope arrives, it's in a box in a foam cutout, but there's actually no carry case that comes with it, so just so that you're aware. So we have a dust cap on there. It's got a felt lining inside it, so it goes on and off very smoothly. That's good. And let's take a look at the objective lens. So this is what we see looking at the objective lens. You can see we've got some writing in here telling us that it's F7 ED dual speed focus and that the diameter of the primary objective lens is 102mm. You can see a slight tinge of green on the reflection there off of the lens, which is indicative of the coating on the lens, which is an FMC ultra wideband multi-layer coating. And the glass itself is SFPL-51 ED glass. So next we have the dew shield, and this is really quite a long dew shield, moves very smoothly, comes to a clean stop, and you can see we've got quite a long length there, and that's really going to help to reduce dew build-up. So I like that feature a lot. I imagine a dew heater band would probably best fit just around here, just behind the dew shield, which if I look down inside is not too far away from the objective lens, which is about here. So that's good. So the next thing to look at is the telescope rings and the dovetail. So it's a Vixen dovetail, as you can see here, and it looks like it's about 20 centimeters long. There does seem to be enough room on the bottom of the rings to swap that for a Losmandy if that's what you would prefer, but a Vixen is probably sufficient for this kind of telescope. The rings themselves are nicely made and finished in a matte black coating, and we've got these big knurled thumb screws for loosening the telescope in the rings so that we can slide it along. Just takes a little bit of persuasion to make it move. Provided it's loose enough, we can get a decent smooth motion going on there. That's nice. On the tops of the telescope rings we have 5 M6 threaded holes on each ring so that we can fit something on the top there, perhaps to carry a control computer and or a guide scope. So telescope rings pretty much fit for purpose, no problems there at all. At the back of the telescope, the next thing we come across is this thumb screw here, which is the lock screw for the manual rotation interface, which is here. And as you can see, we've got a nice rotation facility with no end stop so that we can frame our target however we wish on our sensor. And once you have it in position, you can lock it off. One thing I would really like to have here, which is not present, is a graticule marked in degrees on this surface, with a line, so that if your Nina, for example, is telling you to turn 24 degrees anti-clockwise, you can do that in one hit if you have a graticule. They've not included one, and it would be a really good improvement to this product if they added one. It's got a nice clean surface there available for doing so. I see no reason why they shouldn't add that. So next thing behind that is the dual speed Crayford focuser, which I showed before. Very smooth motion. It's got a coarse adjustment and a fine adjustment. And if we switch to the other side, you can see that we have another coarse adjustment knob on this side. Now, as I wind this out, you can see that there's a marked graticule here showing you how far you've moved the focus. And it starts at 0, it's marked in millimeters, and it has an end stop at 90 millimeters. So you've got 90 millimeters of adjustment there, which is pretty healthy. And then at the back of the telescope, we have 3 thumb screws on a 2-inch clamp interface. So if I just undo those and slide this adapter out, you see we've got a clamp ring, and that's a nice feature. It means that when you tighten up these thumb screws on whatever you put in here, it doesn't mark it because it clamps it evenly all around the surface. So that's a really good feature there. So it comes with a 2-inch to 1 1/4 inch adapter, and that also has a clamp on the inside of it. Hopefully you can just see there the clamp ring. Perhaps not that easy to see, but you can see it. And again, if you use a 1 1/4 inch camera or 1 1/4 inch eyepiece, you'll be able to clamp down on that with this single thumb screw here without marking the eyepiece or camera, which is a good feature. Now I'm going to be using this for astrophotography, so I'm going to take out this adapter and I'm going to be fitting the 0.8 times reducer flattener. So this is the reducer flattener, which sells separately. It's £120 in the UK, $110 in the US. It comes with rubber caps on both ends. At this end it's a 2-inch, so it's designed to go straight into the 2-inch clamp on the telescope, and at the other end it's an M48 by 0.75 male thread. So all I need to do is loosen these thumb screws and insert the reducer flattener into the end of the telescope and do up the thumb screws. So the next step is I'm going to fit an electronic autofocuser to actually this end of the dual speed focuser, and the way I'm going to do that is just by loosening the manual rotation interface and flipping this over so that I can access the top of it. So here's my ZWO EAF focus motor. I've loosely fitted the L bracket, making sure that the smooth face is on the coupler side, and I've fitted the coupler here. I've secured the grub screws on the EAF end tightly, but they're loose on the other end, and I had to choose the right coupler with the right sized hole for the shaft on this telescope. So I need to do a bit of preparation work on the telescope. So the first step is to take the friction thumb screw out. So we'll just remove that. That'll go back in a little later. And now I'm going to remove a couple of grub screws here. Now it's a shame that I have to do this, but if you look and see, you'll see that I can't use this row of slots or this row of slots because there's no threaded holes on the telescope down either side. And that's definitely room for improvement there from SVBONY. They could easily broaden this and put maybe 4 threaded holes in here, M4, for securing things, so we could leave all these grub screws in place, but I can't do that because they've not done so. So I'm just going to take out the grub screws on this handle, focus knob here. Just remove that so we can get to the focus shaft. Very important to always put electronic autofocus on the opposite end to the dual speed end on a Crayford focuser. And you can now see that the coupler will engage onto the shaft, and you can see that the central slot lines up with these various holes. Now this hole here is for the tensioner, which I need to keep, I've got this one available. These two are holding in the bearing at this end, and these two are holding in the bearing at that end. So I don't really want to remove any of those, but I can't secure the bracket in just one place. I need to secure it in at least 2 places. So I've got no choice really, and this is because of the way they've designed it. I'm going to have to remove one of the grub screws that's holding this bearing in place. I don't think it's going to cause that much of a problem, to be honest, but that's definitely an area that they could improve on the design. So let's put that grub screw out. Very easy to drop on the floor, these grub screws. This grub screw here isn't really doing anything. So this one is much less of an issue to remove. I'll try not to drop this one. There we go. It's safely in a little box so I don't lose it. Okay, so I can now introduce the EAF coupler onto the shaft there, being careful to make sure that the securing grub screw, which is here, is lined up with the flat on the shaft, so that when I tighten it, the grub screw will be pressing down on the flat section there. And I'm just now going to put that friction or tensioner adjustment thumb screw back in now, just to secure things in place. And then I've got 2 more solid bolts, and what I've got is a flat washer and a split washer, and then about 12mm I think it's an M3 bolt here that's going to pick up on that threaded hole. So I'll do up that one, and actually that's the washer is actually too wide for the slot there, so I'm just going to stick with the split washer and lose the flat washer. That should work fine. Yeah, that works really nicely now. Okay, so that's good. And now I've got the same again, just with the split washer picking up on the hole that really wasn't doing anything that I took the grub screw out of. So we'll tighten that one up now. Let's get the right sized Allen key. There we go. So that's nice and tight now. And now I need to, now that that's in place, I need to do up these 2 bolts to make sure that the bracket is now holding firmly onto the EAF. So we'll just nip those 2 up as well. That's done. And then the final step there is to do up the grub screw. Okay, and that's now secure. So in terms of, can we fit an electronic autofocuser to this telescope? Absolutely yes. It's a little bit of a fiddle, and they could improve the design to make it easier, but it's on, and I'm sure that's going to work absolutely fine, so I've got no concerns about that. So the next thing to do is to fit the camera and filter wheel onto the end here. Now, because this is just a 2-inch barrel that slides in, I can make this easy on myself by taking it out so that I can screw the reducer flattener directly into the filter wheel. I'll need an M48 to M52 adapter, and then I can bring the whole assembly, camera, filter wheel and focuser reducer, and just slide it in here. So let's do that. Okay, so here's my ASI 2600mm Pro on my EFW7 filter wheel, and I have fitted an M54 male to M48 female adapter onto the other side of the filter wheel. Hopefully you can see that there. And all I'm going to do now is attach the reducer flattener, like so. Okay, let's nip that up. And now I can introduce that whole assembly into the end of the focus tube. Like so, and tighten that up. Okay, and now I can undo the manual rotator interface and just lift the telescope up slightly and turn the whole thing the other way up. So it's now sitting kind of what I would call the right way up on the bench. So my next step is to fit my control computer, and I'm going to have a go with the ASIair here, which I'm not terribly experienced with, but I'm going to give it a go. And I'm going to fit a guide scope in front of that. So what I've done is to make up this plate. It's made out of 1.5 or 2mm aluminium plate, just cut into a rectangle with the corners rounded off so I don't hurt myself on them. And I fitted 2 of these ZWO guidescope shoes on here, one for the ASIair and one for the guidescope. So all I need to do now, I've made 2 holes here. I can just lay that on the top there and fit this using 2 M6 bolts, like so, and just tighten those up. Now, one definite improvement I could make to this plate, other than paint it black so it looks prettier, is it's got a bit of flex at the front there, which I don't like on a guide scope really. What I would do is just put this in a metal bender and just bend the 2 long edges of this plate up at 90 degrees, and that will make it a lot stiffer. But I think, you know, as long as it's not touched, I don't think that flexibility is really going to cause too much of a problem. So I can now bring in my guide scope, which is a Uniguide 32-120 with a ASI 120mm S camera on it. Slot that in there. And now I can bring in the ASIair as well. And I'm going to put it on this way round so that all the USB connectors are facing backwards. And I can just do up the thumb screws there as well, just to secure that in place. So all I need to do now is fit a dew heater band on here and put all my cables for power and USB onto this, and we should be ready to go. So I'll just do that and I'll come back to you. So here it is. This is my fully built rig. I'm quite pleased with it. It's gone together all right. I found a couple of areas where they could improve the design of the telescope, but it's certainly not been that much of a problem to put together. You might be interested now wondering, what does this weigh? Because I know the bare telescope weighs 3.95 kilos, but with all this extra stuff added, its weight is important to understand, because it's now got to fit as a payload onto a mount, and I need to choose which mount to use it with. So I've weighed this and it weighs 8.7 kilos. Now my AM3, ZWO AM3, can handle up to 8 kilos without a counterweight bar, up to 13 with a counterweight bar, but I don't have a counterweight bar for it. Maybe that's something I should invest in. So I can't use my AM3, so I'll have to use my Skywatch HEQ5 mount to carry this, which will handle this amount of weight, no problem. One thing I do want to do though is to check out the balance on this in terms of where's the center of balance along here, because the telescope rings can slide along the telescope, and we need to make sure that we've got a balance point that's ideally somewhere on the dovetail bar. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. So the trick I'm going to use to do this is to get the biro and to just place it underneath the telescope so the dovetail is sitting on it. Now I'm going to take off the dust cap, because that will affect the results, and you can see immediately that it's very tail heavy. It's resting on the pen and it's dropping backwards. Even if I put the pen at the left hand end there, okay, now it's actually forward. So the balance point at the moment, let's just try it in a few different places, it's somewhere close to here. That's still dropping backwards. This is very close. So it's very far back at the moment. So I think what I want to do is move the rings back on the telescope, or move the telescope forward on the rings, whichever you want to call it. And so I'm just going to undo the 2 adjustments and just slide the telescope this way and tighten them up again. So now that's done, I'll get my pen again and let's just see where the balance point is now. It's about there, okay. So it's about 2 inches or 4 or 5 centimeters, 5 centimeters from the back of the dovetail. I think that's good enough. So now this is now ready to take and to put onto the mount. But I will be remembering that that point, about 50 millimeters from the back of the dovetail, needs to ideally be central on the rotating deck. clamp on my mount. So let's go and put it on the mount. So it's the next day and I've got a lovely clear sky tonight. So I've set it all up outside here. The only thing I realised I missed last time was putting a dew heater on the guide scope. So apart from that, everything's the same. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what images I can get from the SV503. One thing I just want to show you before I show you the imagery that I acquired that night is where the focus position was when I achieved focus on the camera sensor. And as you can see here, it was at about 25 millimeters of extension on the focuser. So out of the 90 millimeters, I only had to be out by about 25 centimeters to reach focus, which is good. You don't want it too far out because the further out it is, the more it can sag. So I was quite pleased with that. Okay, well, I had a good couple of hours session last night, got on well with the telescope and with the ASIair in fact. And what I want to do now is show you the data that I acquired. So I'm going to start by showing you a stack of 10 60-second shots. Now I've applied darks calibration, but I've deliberately not applied any flats. In fact, I didn't even acquire any flats because I wanted to show you what the vignetting looked like on this telescope. So this is the red stack. As I say, it's 10 minutes of data, 10 60-second shots. You can clearly see the vignetting. And what we're really interested in is what the stars look like towards the corners. So I've run the aberration inspector and that produces this. Now the stars in the center look really nice and round, no problem. In fact, top center, bottom center, right hand center, they're also very good. Left hand center, just a little bit of elongation, but in the four corners there is a significant amount of elongation that we can see there, and that elongation is pretty balanced between the four corners, so that confirms that I haven't got some nasty tilt offset on my camera mounting. So I'm not surprised with a doublet refractor like this that we've got this much elongation in the corners, and for the money, it's something where I wouldn't recommend it if it wasn't for the fact that these days we have software that can deal with these issues. And I'm talking of course about Blur Exterminator, and what Blur Exterminator can do can make all the difference between whether you want to buy this telescope or not actually. So I'm going to show you in just a moment what it can do, but first of all I'm just going to show you I combined the red, green and blue, so I then got 30 minutes of data, and that looked like this with no corrections, and you can see it's got a very strong turquoise hue to it. So I then ran the background neutralization, and of course now it looks much better. You can see we've got some blue haloing around the cool stars, but it's quite a pleasing looking image actually. If I run the aberration inspector on that, we get pretty much the same story, but of course now it's in color. What I'm going to do now is show you the next step that I took, which is a really important one. That's that I ran Blur Exterminator, and this is what it does to the aberration inspector results. And you can see now that the top left, top right and bottom right corners are all really good. There's hardly any visible elongation at all. I'd say the bottom left corner is not quite as good, but it's still not bad at all. And when you look at the overall image, it really has done a brilliant job. And it's compared with buying a much more expensive triplet refractor, this really is a very interesting prospect now with the Blur Exterminator tool taken into consideration with it. So what did I do next? Well, I thought I would run the dynamic background extraction on that to take out the vignetting, and you can see the bulk of the vignetting has been removed there. And then I ran a spectrophotometric color calibration in order to just get the colors more precise. So that was the result of doing that. And then what I did was to run Noise Exterminator. So let's have a closer look at what we have now. And you can see we've got a dramatically reduced noise, of course, and now we can clearly see this blue haloing around the cooler stars, and there is some yellow haloing going on as well there on the really bright stars. But overall, it's a pretty pleasing looking image, and what I did then was to do a stretch on that to really bring out the detail. And really quite amazing in 30 minutes to see this much detail. You can see just here there's a pretty obvious dust mote. There's obviously a speck of dust maybe on the window in front of the camera sensor that hasn't been corrected, of course, because I didn't apply any flats. Not too concerned about that. I'm sure I could wipe that off or take flats and calibrate it out. But overall, I'm really quite impressed with the imagery from this telescope. Despite the haloing, yeah, and haloing can of course be partly to do with the filters that I'm using as well, so I wouldn't put that all down to the telescope. So yeah, I'm pretty impressed. I'm going to have a go at getting some more data tonight because it's going to be clear again, and see if I can produce perhaps a narrowband image, maybe of the same target but in hydrogen, oxygen and sulfur, and hopefully show you the result of that. So I'll see you shortly once I've done that. Well, I'm delighted to say I managed to get about 4 hours of data last night on narrowband filters, and also a little bit of data on red, green and blue for the stars as well. And I processed that in PixInsight, and I'm actually really pleased with the final image that I managed to get, which I'll show you in just a moment. But before I do that, can I just say, if you are looking to buy one of these telescopes, it would really help the channel out at no expense to you if you were to use the affiliate link, which I'll put in the description, both for the telescope and for the reducer Flattener. It helps the channel out by giving me a small commission, which helps me make more videos like this. And of course, if you like the video, do please click on like, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do so that you get notified of future videos that I make. So without further ado, here's the image that I acquired, and enjoy it, and I'll see you next time.